We are discussing chemicals safety at work. In the part 1, that was an introductory video, how many types of chemicals and how the chemicals affect the human health. In the part 2, we were discussing the ways of entry, how the chemicals cause lungs cancer, how the chemicals affect brain and nervous system, how the chemicals cause allergic reactions, asthma, etc. This is part 3 of chemical safety video series. In this training session, we'll discuss the terms that explain the health effects. For example, what is acute toxicity? An adverse health effect following a single exposure to a chemical. For example, skin contact with insecticides, accidental ingestion of a chemical. That will come under the category of acute toxicity. What are carcinogens? A chemical that causes or can potentially cause cancer. For example, breathing in asbestos fibers, skin contact with used motor oils. This may lead to cancer. You can understand chemicals are very useful, but at the same time, chemicals are very hazardous if not handled, used, or stored safely. What is chronic toxicity, dear friends and fellows? An adverse health effect following repeated exposure to a chemical, which can occur following a relatively short exposure, for example, weeks, a longer term exposure, for example, years. Another important term, CMR, a chemical that is carcinogenic, mutagenic, or toxic to reproduction, that is called CMR. What do you understand by the term corrosive? A chemical that causes irreversible damage to skin, eyes, or airways. For example, strong acids and strong bases, such as concentrated hydrochloric acid or concentrated hydroxides. What do you understand by the term irritant? A chemical that causes irreversible damage to skin, eyes, or airways. For example, detergents or soaps. These all things we are using on daily basis at houses, at work, domestically or commercially. So we should be well aware of the chemical terms and the safety of chemicals. What is mutagen? A chemical that can cause permanent damage to genetic material in cells, which can possibly lead to heritable genetic damage or cancer. For example, ultraviolet rays from the sun, benzene, etc. What is the definition of reproductive toxin? A chemical that can affect adult male or female reproductive system, their ability to reproduce, and or that can lead to birth defects. For example, lead or carbon monoxide. This may cause reproductive problems for both males and females. What is the meaning of a sensitizer with respect to chemical safety? A chemical that can cause an allergic reaction in the airways following inhalation of the chemical. For example, isocyanate. What is skin sensitizer? A chemical that can cause an allergic reaction of the skin following skin contact. For example, wood dust or adhesives. These were few important terms, their definitions, and short explanation with examples. Let us understand now what other hazards are associated with chemicals. Dear friends and fellows, you are on the platform of Safety First Life. If you are first time on this channel, kindly subscribe it and press the bell icon for all future notifications. And if you find the video informative, then like, comment, and share it with your friends and colleagues. Chemicals may also have physical hazards. For example, flammable, explosive, or have additional hazards if they are mixed or stored with incompatible chemicals. Chemicals can also have an adverse effect on the environment if they are used, stored, or disposed of incorrectly. You have to remember, if you are in control of your workplace or have specific responsibilities for managing safety as a safety practitioner, as a safety supervisor, or even as a site in charge, then you need to ensure that you are controlling all hazards in whatever form that chemical may exist in the workplace. You are ultimately responsible to manage it safely and to keep the workers away from the harm, or you have to control the risk to an acceptable level. Let us understand now how to manage chemicals safely at work. Managing chemicals in a safe and sustainable way makes sound business sense and will ensure your employees and the environment are protected from the harmful effects of hazardous chemicals. This section of the video will guide you in taking a logical approach, assessing the hazards and potential risks, and ensuring the necessary controls are in place to enable you to manage your chemicals safely. So, this is an important part, and everybody who is utilizing chemicals, who is storing chemicals, who is handling chemicals, who is transporting chemicals, they should understand how to manage chemicals safely at work. The most important sources of information on the hazards of your chemicals are the label and the safety data sheet SDS. What information you can grab from the labels, dear friends and fellows. Chemicals should be supplied with a label attached to the container, a bottle. The label gives information on the chemical, a product name, the chemical hazards, and the precautions you should take into account to ensure safe use of chemicals. What is the use of SDS, safety data sheet, with respect to chemical safety? You must have a SDS, safety data sheet, for each hazardous chemical that you use. If you don't, contact the supplier who is required to give you one, a copy of SDS. You should keep your SDS in a clearly identified place where they can be easily accessed by your employees and by the emergency services. They will require these sheets when they attend a chemical incident. You should make sure that all your employees know where the SDS are stored and that they are read and understood them if required. You have also to make sure safety data sheets must be provided for chemicals classified as hazardous, contain 16 headings, be prepared by a competent person, be specific to the chemical, be clear and understandable, be provided free of charge, be provided upon update or revision to everyone who has received the chemical during the previous 12 months, and be dated and the pages numbered. This is the minimum requirement for a safety data sheet. How you have to maintain, how you have to keep it, and what it must include. Let us discuss now the contents of a safety data sheets. There must be 16 headings. What are these 16 points? Point number one, identification of the substance, preparation, and of the company undertaking. Number two, hazards identification. Number three, composition, information on ingredients. Number four, first aid measures. Number five, firefighting measures. Number six, accidental release measures. Number seven, handling and storage. Number eight, exposure controls, personal protection. Number nine, physical and chemical properties. Number 10, stability and reactivity. Number 11, toxicological information. Number 12, ecological information. Number 13, disposal consideration. Number 14, transport information. Number 15, regulatory information. And number 16, other information. Dear friends and fellows, these 16 points gives enough information for safety, for safe usage, for safe transportation to deal with an emergency situation, chemical spillage, chemical disposal, and the effects of chemicals on humans or on the environment. So, safety data sheet is very important to understand about the chemicals, their properties, characteristics, and the toxicity. The SDS plays a number of roles in managing the safe use of chemicals in your workplace. Let us discuss how SDS ensures the product is being used as intended by the manufacturer or importer. Number two, it is a key tool for risk assessment as it includes detailed hazard information. Number three, it provides options for appropriate control measures and procedures to be applied. Number four, sufficient information should be provided to select the necessary personal protective equipment. Number five, PPE, personal protective equipment, and to develop necessary emergency procedures. Number six, SDS may be used as the basis of a training program for workers as it covers hazards. Number seven, information on safe handling and storage and emergency procedures. Number eight, workplace monitoring and health surveillance strategies may often be based on advice that you can get from SDS that is contained in safety data sheet. Do you know there are lots of sources of information about chemical hazards? For example, from trade associations or chemical data sheets provided by manufacturers. However, it is important to follow the advice provided in your SDS in the first instance because these guidelines, instructions, recommendations provided by the manufacturer and manufacturers knows well what he is going to produce, what are the hazards and how to use it safely, how to store it safely, how to deal it safely. After discussing chemicals and properties of chemicals and from where you can grab the information, now make analysis. Do you have a list of all the chemicals in your workplace? Before you can identify the chemical hazards in your workplace, you first need to identify the chemicals which you store or use and the processes which generate dust or fumes. You can do this by walking through your workplace and making a note of the chemicals or processes you see on your site. You can also ask your employees to help you identify chemicals which they are using or aware of. Remember, chemicals can be individual substances, for example, acetone, petrol, or mixtures, products, for example, paint or degreasers. You may find it useful to record this information in a chemical inventory. This will make a database for you for your project, and you are well aware what chemicals you are using, your workers, your workforce, they are utilizing on your work site. Dear friends and fellows, check the label on the container, the safety data sheet SDS, or any documentation which came with the chemical to help identify it. You can request a SDS from your supplier if you don't have one available. Practically, we have noticed there are several chemicals on site where labels are missing, SDS are not available, and it is very difficult to identify these chemicals. Their label is no longer visible or attached to the container or where chemicals are stored in an unmarked container. Remember, it is never safe to use chemicals if you are not sure what they are. It is important to include such unknowns on your inventory sheet so that their location is documented. You should arrange to have these unknown chemicals safely removed from your workplace, your worksite. Otherwise, unknown chemicals can cause a tragic incident at your project, on your construction site. Include any dust, mist, fumes, or waste products which are generated as byproducts of a process or work activity. Although these may not be intentionally produced, it is important to record these on your inventory sheet so that you can check that the correct control measures are in place. Not only you, maybe you are going to leave the company or the site, someone going to join and going to replace you. Once your record is maintained, inventory is documented, chemicals and unknown chemicals both are mentioned on the inventory, it is easier for anyone to implement safety and to use chemicals safely. And the chemicals without labels, SDS, are unknown. They must be removed from the site immediately. In any case, these chemicals are not safe and shall not be used by anyone at work. Dear friends and fellows, it is useful at this stage to make a note of what the chemical is used for. It may help to identify chemicals which are no longer used and can be disposed of. You should include chemicals used for or which are generated as part of maintenance, cleaning, or repair work. Note down how much of the chemicals you have and where and how it is stored. It is a good practice to only store the amount of chemicals you need at site. By indicating on your inventory where the chemicals are stored, you can easily locate it and also avoid storing extra amounts. You can also note that the type of container it is stored in, for example, plastic or glass bottle, and the condition of the container. It will help anyone implement chemical safety on the work site and to maintain best practices, safety practices with respect to chemicals at work. The label and SDS are the most important sources of information about the hazardous properties of your chemicals. So it is important that you have an up-to-date SDS for each chemical and that the label attached to the chemical container is visible. After completing the site tour, after completing the chemicals inventory, after marking, after understanding, after segregating hazardous chemicals, their safety data sheets, availability of labels, and how many unknown chemicals on your site. Then you can identify the hazards one by one. The hazard pictograms or danger symbols give you a quick indication of the hazards associated with the chemical. For example, this chemical is an irritant or flammable. Number two, the hazard statements or risk phrases give more detailed information on the hazard. Number three, safety phrases or precautionary statements give advice to ensure safe use of your chemicals at work. Do you know a chemical can have more than one hazard associated with it? That's why it's important to record all hazards. For example, acetone is highly flammable, a severe eye irritant, and causes drowsiness or dizziness. So you cannot say, you cannot mention only the acetone is flammable. You have to mention it is irritant and can cause dizziness. So for a user, it is better to understand all hazards of the specific chemical and use safe working procedures and the personal protective equipment to protect himself from chemical hazards at work on the job site. Do you know what is a hazard pictogram? What do they mean? Until 2015, you will see either hazard symbols or new hazard pictograms on SDS and labels. The 9 pictograms, according to the new CLP regulation, are presented along with the existing hazard symbols, which you might be familiar with. I'm going to highlight these 9 pictograms. Out of 9, number 1 is explosion hazard. Number 2, chemical is stored as a gas under pressure. Number 3, flammability hazard. Number 4, oxidizing hazard. Number 5, corrosion hazard. Number 6, health hazards such as skin and eye irritation and skin sensitization. Number 7, acute toxicity hazard. Number 8, serious long term health hazards, for example, carcinogenic, reproductive toxicity, or respiratory sensitization. And number 9, environmental hazards. Remember, these are the updated and new list of hazards with respect to chemicals safety. You can get more information from CLP classification, labeling and packaging regulation 2008 and CPL dangerous substances directive. Dear friends and fellows, in the upcoming video, chemical safety part 4, I'll make a quick assessment of exposure to the chemicals. Chemical safety part 3 is over. If you have any question, please ask in the comment section. Chemicals are hazardous. Your health is very important for you, No safety practitioner, no site supervisor. Only you can protect yourself from chemicals, from harm. And this is morally and legally your own responsibility to protect yourself from harm as well as your co-workers, your friends at work. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and share the video. Hope to see you soon with a new HSC tutorial. Until then, take care. Good luck and goodbye.